Well, thanks for having me, everybody. Initially, I was going to talk about a marketing topic, and you can ask those questions afterward. You can really ask me anything afterward, personal or professional, how to build your business, social media, anything. Really, I'm an open book, so nothing's off limits. But when Catrice asked me to speak, which the beauty topics do come naturally to me, I had just been reading Girl Wash Your Face by Rachel Hollis. Has anybody read that book, Girl Wash Your Face? It's trending right now, and I have read another biography, and I was really inspired to tell my story for the first time in quite some time. So I'm going to tell my story, and then I thought afterward I'll open it up and you can ask any questions. And I wrote it out because I don't want to forget anything. But my name is Lisa Davis. I'm the owner of Image by Lisa. I'm a professional makeup artist. But before that, I was quite in the beauty field. I went to Florida State right down the road. Everything looks way different now as I'm driving down the street. I received my degree at 20. At 21, I was married. At 24, I had my first of 4 children. Started really early. Now when brides come to me and they're young, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're a baby. At that time, I decided to stay home with my daughter. And I was 24, like I said at the time. And the realities of that sacrifice were very difficult for my husband and I. It was super stressful. We were living on a small income and living in a little tiny 900 square foot cottage, and life was very simple. But I remember at the time that grocery shopping and the realities of living on a fixed budget and staying home with children was also really stressful. And I remember sometimes just crying at the grocery store because I couldn't get what I wanted to get. And life wasn't what I thought it was going to be, because I was a college educated, I had a degree, and here I was staying at home and barely making ends meet. Well, during that time, and this is just a story that came to my mind as I was writing this, I went to a baby shower, and it was for a girl, I can't even remember who it was, but it was hosted by an attorney here in town, and her house was massive. And she had this cute little dog with a little ponytail on the top of his head, and he went to doggy daycare every day. And I remember her telling me how much it was, and I was like, oh my gosh, this lady spends more on doggy daycare than I spend on food all month long. And I was jealous and upset. And I left the, I have tissues just in case I cry. I was upset, and I thought, well, I want that. You know, I want to change my lifestyle, and I want to have more income. And anyway, that's just a side note that I was just like, it prompted me to start searching. So I started searching out income opportunities at that time. By that time, I was pregnant with my second child. My first 3 were 18 months apart. Don't do that. Space them out. And I remember swinging my first child in the backyard thinking about, okay, well, maybe direct sales is an option for me because I stay at home, and it's something you can do with some flexibility. And I had never really thought of it before because I don't want to be that girl. Y'all know that girl, right? That girl that chases you down, and you guys are going to have that in this industry. I'm sure people are going to sit in your chair and they're going to be like, oh, you would be perfect for blah, blah, blah. And a lot of people have stalked me in that kind of way, and I didn't want to be that girl. So at first I was a little put off by it, but I was like, well, maybe I can explore it and see what fits with my personality. It was the only thing I could think of that would keep me home with the kids. And so I explored some different options, found one that really fit my personality, which was in the beauty field. Loved makeup, loved skincare, all things image, I'm into it. I have an addiction to makeup. Thank God I'm a professional makeup artist because I spend a lot of money on makeup. And so I found something that fit my personality, and I finally joined. Now, this was in 2005. I was quickly able to alleviate our financial pressure. I was making about $500 to $1,000 a month, and for me, back then, that was a lot of money. Within a few years, I had risen to the top of my company. I went from a consultant to a senior executive director, promoting 22 directors, and selling over $100,000 in volume per month. My income went from about $1,000 a month in those early years to well over $12,000, $15,000, $20,000 a month. Some months I made $45,000, $50,000 in one month. I was making more in a month than most people made in a year. I loved what I was doing. More than that, of course, I was connecting my clients with a product, which is a lot of what you guys are going to do, right? But I was connecting my consultants with something that they needed, which was a sense of purpose or additional income or a lot of income, depending on what they wanted out of it. I was able to upgrade our lifestyle at that time. Bigger houses, bigger cars, boats, cleaning ladies. I had an assistant. I had somebody who grocery shopped for me and wrapped Christmas presents because I couldn't do it all. And I couldn't pick up the kids and get them to where they needed. Now looking back, a lot of things fell through the cracks during those years. Not to mention trips, bonuses, vehicles, recognition. Almost everything I owned, I had earned from the company. Computers, iPads, televisions, gaming systems for my children. I had become the it girl in my company. I had become the it girl within the industry. When I walked into the room, I was the one that people wanted to talk to. And often I would hear whispers like, oh my gosh, is that Lisa? By the time that came around, I was senior trainer within the company, so I traveled teaching, speaking to groups just like this. I had 1,200 consultants on my personal sales force and was generating millions of dollars in sales for the company per year. Well, everything must come to an end, right? 2013, things started to change. I was 9 years into my business. I was divorced after 15 years of marriage. I was 35 years old. I had 3 children. I pushed through. Remained consistent. Everybody all right? Y'all gonna cry with me? Any criers in the room? Anybody cries, I'm like, oh, I agree. Oh goodness. Okay, so I was the sole breadwinner at this time though, so I was completely freaked out. I was not as comfortable as I had been in the past. And decisions that were being made within my company made absolutely no sense to me. Consultants and leaders were jumping ship and fast. Conferences were becoming smaller. We were making less money. It didn't seem like anything I tried worked. Working harder? Nope, didn't work. Trying new things? Nope, didn't work. So I started to react. I reduced my living expenses. I stopped shopping. I started cutting my own hair. Bad idea. It looked bad. Stopped getting my nails done. I watched a lot of YouTube videos during that time about how to cut your hair. It never really worked right. As y'all know, people come in here probably get fixed all the time. But I was scared. And eventually things became so dire that I started walking into pawn shops here in Tallahassee and selling off my annual awards jewelry. Now, within the direct selling industry, if none of you have been a part of that before, the recognition is huge, which is awesome because you feel like you are in something that there's that gratitude there. And I had earned all these beautiful diamond pieces, and I pawned them all off for what seemed like pennies. I remember walking out in tears. During that time, my mother lived with me. She was permanently disabled due to cancer and the treatments and their side effects. My children were dealing with the loss of our marriage, and my income continued to decline. I didn't know what to do. I had people depending on me. So I decided to get a full-time job, and wow, oh my gosh. Now I was working 2 full-time jobs. So I was working during the day, coming home, working my second job or my side hustle, but really people didn't know it was a side hustle. It was really full-time income at night. Doing parties, trainings, conferences, travel, life was insane. In fact, during that time, my lights got shut off twice. And it wasn't because I didn't have the money. It was because I forgot to pay the bill. Things were just falling through the cracks. Eventually, things got so bad during that time that I decided to go to my dad for help. Now, this is huge because in my family, you don't ask for help, okay? If it's to be, it's up to me. That has always been the philosophy. I was the caretaker for my parents more than they were the opposite way around. I met my dad at McDonald's that day and humbly told him about the situation and what was going on. He was gracious and understanding. He handed me a $2,000 check that day so that I could pay my rent. Also, up until that point, I was in a very dysfunctional relationship with a man that I knew was not good for me. I was serving my mom, my kids, working the 2 jobs. I was losing my mind. I was getting my first taste of emotional devastation and depression. I would lay in bed, Sometimes I would cry all day, not get out of bed. But one day, I was at a meeting sort of like this, and I was sitting there like, ugh. And my regional vice president said to me, Lisa, what is it that you need to do to put your oxygen mask on? And he reminded me that, when you fly, you're supposed to put your oxygen mask on first, then you put the oxygen masks on of everybody else around you or the dependents that you have with you. It's important to take care of yourself. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I went home, and something sparked in me that day, and I thought, I'm going to go home and I'm going to write a list of everything that is draining me. Because in my business, they would say a lot of inspirational things. And one of my regionals would say things like, oh, I drink from my saucer because my cup is overflowing. And I'd be like, screw that. Like, my cup's empty, my saucer's empty, like, I'm bone dry, I've got nothing to give nobody. I have nothing left. And so I went home and I started making a list of all the things that were draining me in small ways. And sometimes, guys, don't you feel like this isn't a big deal, this isn't a big deal, this isn't a big deal, and it all adds up to a really big deal? Have you ever felt like that? Like, it's a lot of little things that add up to a really big deal. And then you end up like, oh my God, how did I get here? I'm like completely devastated emotionally. And that's what had happened. So I went home, I wrote the list. And some of the things that were on the list was getting my mom moved out of my home. We had gone through the process of having her approved for disability. She's permanently disabled. She was approved after, and it's a long process. So she was able to get a little condo. We moved her out. I have my oldest is a girl, and she's 16 now. At the time, I think she was like 12 or 11. She had always slept in my room. My kids were always sleeping in my room. Finally getting them out of my room. And anybody have children? Like, you have to have your space, And they were always in my space. So that was a small thing, but it was a big thing, like getting them out of my space so that Mama had some peace, all right? So I could take a bath without everybody, like, watching me. That was one of the things. Moving away from my toxic boyfriend, which, if any of y'all been ever in a toxic relationship, that's hard to get away from, and you think, oh my gosh, I'm stronger than this. Like, who is this girl that keeps going back to this idiot? That kind of situation. Well, I started making those changes, and I felt like I was really headed in a good direction. Although my company was continuing to climb, things were still tough, at least I was making some changes, right? So the very next week, I get a call from the police. My dad had not shown up for work. So I frantically drive to his dad's house where the police had found him. He had been dead for 4 days. He had passed away over Memorial Day weekend. Until you lose a parent, there are no words to describe. So in the midst of all of this, and I had felt like I was spiraling, my dad had passed away. And I was planning the funeral, going through his things. And more importantly, it's crazy because you're acting like everything's okay. Like, people see you and they're like, how are you? And you're like, hey, I'm great. Not, not at all. I'm going to shoot myself. But my dad was a man of faith. I knew where he was. I moved forward with a sense of peace and moved forward knowing that my life should look different than it did at that moment. And more than anything, I felt like God was telling me in that time, your dad and I would never want you in this relationship. So it gave me the strength to move forward out of that relationship, finally. Goodbye, over, don't talk to me again, don't ever come back into my life, see you later. He left. I never saw him again. And although I was grieving the loss of what I thought was love, right, and my dad, and the decline of my business, again, I was headed in the right direction. 2 weeks after the funeral, I called my mom and I planned to come swim with her at her condo, and I was going to bring the kids. We just needed to get the funeral and everything off of our mind. We needed a break. And as soon as I walked into the pool, I saw a man standing across the pool. The most beautiful man I've ever seen in my entire life. He was kind of standing like this. Christine was there. Christine's one of my best friends, and she's also a small business owner here in Tallahassee. She's my accountability partner, which is great, guys, when you go into business for yourself. She was with me that day, and I saw him standing like this with his hat and his Ray-Bans and his chiseled abs. And his posture screamed, "I'm a douchebag."
Yes, it did.
Yes. So I diverted my attention to the kids and my friends that were with me at the pool, trying hard not to make eye contact with this hottie McHottie. Plus, I was hurting, and I knew that I could not risk my heart anymore. I was beyond devastated emotionally. So later that week, I received a text from a friend stating that the chiseled man was trying to figure out who I was. And he had convinced a friend to host a party so that he could meet me. And I arrived at the party with my mom in tow because my mom went everywhere with me during those years. And there he was. Turns out he was an angel, I believe sent by God and my dad. Because I think I may have ended up going backward, and he rescued me from that. This beautiful guy at the pool turned out to be equally as beautiful on the inside as the outside. He literally swept me off my feet. We fell desperately in love. We were married 6 months later. And child number 4, that next year. Okay, so my company decided to continue to decline its downward spiral in our first year of marriage. When the phone call finally came that first year in July, I was in tears as my company, and I was celebrating 12 years with them, laid off 50,000 people. Hundreds at the home office, and I was one of them. It was an end of the era. My income was completely gone. And people lose jobs all the time. I had never really given that much thought before. I've always been like, well, whatever, you just get over it, right? I mean, I never considered myself much of an emotional person until I went through all of this, and I was like, just get another job, no big deal. Get over it, right. Wrong. Walking through something like that gives you a renewed perspective. I hadn't lost just an income, I had lost my identity. I was my role with this company. Everything about me was wrapped up in the position that I had and the success I had attained. I was the girl everybody looked up to. They asked questions of me. They wanted to know what I was doing or talking to me about how to do this or how to do that. I didn't realize it back then, but my soul was fed by who I was within this industry. It was my oxygen, and I started another grieving process. And as I went through that process, it's just a side note, one of my counselors said, you're going to get your oxygen from somewhere. You're getting it from somewhere, whether you realize it or not. And you need to get it from a source that connects you to who you really are. I had connected and got my oxygen from who I was in this company. So my biggest hurdle became redefining myself. And surprisingly, being broke again wasn't all that bad. I had certainly done that before. I had started from nothing. But no one called me anymore. I wasn't speaking in front of crowds anymore. I wasn't the badass beauty mogul anymore. So who was I? I can tell you what came to my mind during that year. You're a loser. You're nobody. And at that time, I knew it wasn't my fault that my company had closed. I experienced grief all over again in a completely different way. The loss of my position and my income also caused problems in my marriage, because guess what? A new emotion popped up that I had never experienced before. Insecurity. Being self-sufficient comes with a certain arrogance, and that was gone. I don't need anybody to take care of me. I can take care of myself. That's how I always was. Well, all of a sudden, I couldn't take care of myself. And I happened to have this super young, super hot new husband who had fallen in love with this person over here. And now I wasn't that person anymore. I was this person over here. At least that's what I kept telling myself. Okay, so you might be thinking, okay, this is really depressing, Lisa. Like, get to the point. Like, this is going to turn around. So the moral story, hold on. So I had spent 12 years of my life putting makeup on thousands of women. When I look back, I had done over 1,000 parties. I had sold upwards of $10,000 in makeup per month, personally. So Plan B really had already started to develop even before my company had closed. 3 years before, I had begun my freelance makeup artistry business called Image by Lisa. And I'm ruining my makeup today. I baked, y'all, but it didn't work. Plus, once you get to a certain age, baking doesn't look so great anymore anyway. My side hustle as Image by Lisa was becoming my full-time hustle. And you can follow me on Instagram, Image by Lisa. I still love all things girly, but I want to share a couple things that helped me get through those times, and wherever you might be, completely different issues and struggles. Hopefully this speaks to you. One is gratitude for my past. In the moment, it's hard to see the light. And I'll be honest, I got so sick of people saying, oh, it's going to get better. Oh, next year's going to look so different. You're going to look back. And I'll be like, screw you. I don't hear any more of that crap. Just let me waller, you know? But now I see that if people had not made fun of me for joining a direct selling company, I would have never been so inspired to crush it like I did. I wouldn't have worked so hard. And if I hadn't crushed it, I would not have gained the skills that helped me to build another business or to be successful in other life endeavors. If I had not lost it all, I would not have empathy for those struggling with depression, loss, and grief. If I had not forced my mom to move out of my house, y'all, I would have never met that hottie at the pool. If my dad hadn't passed away, I would have probably continued to go back to my toxic boyfriend. Losing it all has been a journey of being okay with me, as I am, just Lisa, rich or poor, knowing that my value doesn't come from how much money I make, the title I have, or the esteem that I have. Number two, lastly, I learned to enjoy the journey. So many people look at the end result, the goal, and what they want to be sometime down the road, the ultimate arrival. And I recently heard someone say that he enjoys the journey there more than arriving. He said, and I quote, most people like to eat the cake. I like to make the cake. It reminded me of how much I enjoyed the trenches when nobody knew my name or recognized me. I stayed up late working, early working. I had my head down and I was busy with the small activities that eventually built an empire. When I lost everything, I was so focused on the fact that I had lost it all that I did not see that I had the opportunity now to make another cake. It's a new year. It's an exciting time. And every year I pick a word that defines my year. And in the past it's been peace or, just rest. Like I've had times of rest, and now I look back over the time that I lost it all, I'm like, okay, I had a time of rest. Yeah, I was broke, but like it was nice to just have a break. This year's word is resurgence. I challenge you to pick what word will define your 2019. And with that, we're going to show a quick video, and then after I invite you to ask me anything. It can be marketing, business, or personal. I'm an open book, like I said. And it's all right if we go ahead and show. I love things that inspire me. One of my favorite times of the day is in the morning when I'm putting on my makeup, because y'all probably relate, it's artistry, it's art, so I like to do it. It's a process every morning that relaxes me. And I listen to sermons or videos or what do you call them?